If you're window shopping for airplanes and just looking at the purchase price, trying to decide, is this a good deal versus a bad deal? I think that approach might get you into some trouble. And so this video is to help you have a more holistic approach to the airplane buying process, and most importantly, help you dodge some bullets. Now, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have a budget or a target purchase price in mind. You totally should. That can be a very helpful thing, but I wouldn't use that as your only anchor point to look through the different listings online and try to say, oh, here's one for 30K or 100K or whatnot. There's a lot that goes into it. I mean, think about it in a non-aviation example. If you're looking for a car and a car drives past you on the road and it's this clunker, it's a beater of a car, but on the back it's got 500 or best offer written on it, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good deal for you, even if you have $500. And so it's pretty similar in aviation. Usually the stakes are the stakes are definitely higher safety-wise, but the prices are often higher than cars. But the similar principles definitely apply. And so we don't want to just be looking at price as our only guiding principle as to whether or not a listing is a good deal or a bad deal. There's two other really important considerations that I think will help round out the way that you are approaching purchasing an airplane. The first thing I'd encourage you to consider is, what are you actually getting for the purchase price of that airplane? If you're looking at 182s, for example, and you go look at all the listings online, there's gonna be a wide range of asking prices for all of those 182s. And there's a lot of really good factors that go into how those prices are determined. And so some sellers might be a little irrational, but in general, if you just take the whole market, there's factors driving these prices to figure out kind of what the average worth should be based on those different factors. And so, if you're thinking, okay, I've got a ceiling price of 80K or something, and you want to just start searching for all the 182s that are 80K and sorting by, price low to high, you might find some in your price range, but it might come with a lot of things that you actually don't want in an airplane. Just like that beater car driving down the road for $500 doesn't mean that that's going to be a good airplane for you. So I'm not saying you can't find good 182s for 80K. I'm just using that for the sake of example. But there's a lot of things driving the price, and so don't just think about the price and say, okay, I'll just get I'll take whatever I can get for this price. There's a lot of things that go into it. So things like the total time of the airframe, the total time on the engine, the condition of the exterior and the interior of the aircraft, the avionics panel, what is it or is it not equipped with? Do they have lost logbooks, or do they have complete logbooks throughout the life of the airplane, life of the engine? Is there any damage history? There's a lot of things that go into actually driving the price. And so if you say, hey, I found one for 80K or whatever your number is, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the airplane you should buy, because you really need to think about all of these other things. So a healthy exercise is, as you're doing your research of your different planes, I would start documenting all of these in some sort of spreadsheet, either Google Sheets or Excel or whatever, and start writing down and think of all those different pricing factors. And that way you have your own internal set of comps, of comparables to see, okay, well, I've kind of got a range of prices based on these different factors, and it will help you spot a good deal versus a bad deal or something that's accurately priced, whatnot. So start documenting all of that. If you'd like information on this process and kind of more detail on how airplanes are typically priced, I put out a whole separate video that I'll link up in the corner that I think will just arm you with more information here if you're serious about going down the purchasing process. So if you'll analyze what you're actually getting for the purchase price, the takeaway, the result here is that it's going to help either validate or debunk your assumption for what type of airplane you're going to get for the money. So say that your purchase price is 80K and you had some certain airplane in mind, but you find for 80K that more times than not, it's going to have really high engine time. It's not going to have good avionics on board. It's going to be in bad condition. But if you can step down to a smaller airplane or a lesser airplane, but 80K gets you like the primo version of that's equipped the way you want it, then that's going to be really, really revealing to you. And so you're not just looking for a certain type of airplane in a certain budget. You're starting to analyze, what are you actually getting for the price of that airplane? The second thing I'd encourage you to consider past just the purchase price is the ongoing expenses associated with that particular airplane. I know in my 182, I've owned it for 5 years this month, actually, as of this filming. The purchase price of the airplane that I spent up front, I have probably paid that same amount again over the last 5 years. So you buy it once, and then over the course of time, you buy it again, essentially, through all the different things you're having to pay to upkeep the airplane, to operate the airplane, to have it even sit there in a hangar, right? There's a lot of different expenses expenses that go into it. And I think what a lot of people will do is they'll say, okay, I've got a budget of 30K or 100K or what have you, but they don't think about what are all the costs down the road. And so they won't keep enough in reserve to actually own and operate that airplane. And so doing so becomes such a burden in their life, they have to get rid of it. And so they're not really thinking too far ahead as to what it's going to take to really own and operate that airplane. And so there's a lot of different expenses here. I mean, if you've got a payment on the airplane or the hangar of the airplane, you got to keep it somewhere. You got to insure the airplane. You got to put gas in it. You got to maintain it. There's other subscriptions not really associated with the airplane itself. If you got a ForeFlight subscription, or maybe you've got a GPS, data subscription, there's different gear that you'll buy. There's a bunch of stuff. And I don't say that to sound intimidating or say like, oh man, you really shouldn't do this. But I think a lot of people underestimate the ongoing expenses of owning the airplane. I have put together a separate video on this that talks about the ownership and the operating costs of 7 commonly entry-level airplanes. And so based on my own experience, my firsthand experience, and a bunch of research, I kind of put together the model to say, okay, this is about how much it would cost on a monthly basis to own and operate these airplanes. So I think that will be a helpful starting point to you. So if you'll consider ahead of time the ongoing ownership and operating costs of the airplane you are considering, the takeaway, the result here is that it's going to either validate or debunk that purchase price for you, because you might find that you actually need to pull back a little bit and keep some in reserve for some of those ongoing expenses. So it's okay to be shopping with a target price in mind, but just remember to consider what you're actually getting for that purchase price, and then also don't forget about all the ongoing expenses that you'll have once you actually purchase that airplane. And so those 2 videos that I mentioned are also down in the description. I hope that it will be a service to you in your aviation journey. So thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to leave me a comment down below if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys next week.